All right, guys. So I think this will end up being posted on my Instagram or YouTube, but I want to chat right now with Brandon Burns, and we're going to discuss again my experience in my career with gymnastics and all the really cool stuff. And Brandon and I have a really unique relationship. We were both gymnasts, and then we had the opportunity to work together, know each other really well on multiple different levels. So I just asked Brandon, I said, "Hey, man, let's sit down and let's just dive into some of the nitty gritty of training." And let's just get some awesome questions from the perspective of an ex-athlete as well. So we wrote down some questions and hopefully we can create some really good content from this.
Yeah, it's crazy actually. Some of the similarities. Brandon just said. Well, first of all, we're both named Brandon, so there's one
Mm-hmm.
thing out of the way. Second of all, we were both gymnasts. We were both rings guys for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
We're both very interested in business and entrepreneurship and coaching and speaking and all that stuff. So this is kind of just like me, but hopefully 10 years down the line because he's a lot richer and jacked than I am. So we'll go with that. But yeah,
Time.
man, right timing. But I'm excited for this. I'm excited for this because your story is so unique. Like just what you did over this past year or so is just crazy to me. So I'm excited to ask you some questions about that. But first and
Thank you.
foremost, for anybody who doesn't know who Brandon Wynn is, give us the 60-second rundown.
This is always like a really hard question to answer because I don't know. I feel like I always struggle with like defining myself because I have so many different passions in life and so many different things I do. But I guess if you were to give the standard answer, I've spent a lot of time being an athlete in my life. I'm somebody that is very into mindset training, emotional intelligence. I'm very into exploring human connection and enjoying all the beautiful things that life has to offer. I'm very into building businesses and entrepreneurship and creating opportunities and then creating fulfilling opportunities for myself and helping others at the same time. I think that's basically how I spend my time. It's really just four buckets. Like I said, it's mindset, emotional intelligence, my health, my business, and then human connection and enjoying and exploring all those other things in life. So that's where I focus. But I had a pretty successful athletic career, and I'm heading into a successful entrepreneurial career as well.
Can I go off script already?
Yeah, let's just kill it, man.
Because
Let's just get.
it's funny because I was hearing you talk about those different things that you do, and there's another similarity I think between the two of
Mhm.
us is you just have all these different buckets of your life, and it seems like you're just trying to dial up your potential as far as you can. You're
Yeah.
trying to close that gap between where you're at and where you could be, and I think
Yes.
there's a reason that so many former athletes go into business. And the way that you just said it too, it's not like just athletics and business, but even the relationship side, the mindset side, it seems like you're just trying to max out everything that you do. Is there a common thread, do you think, between people who excel at any of those activities that allows them to kind of do what you just described and jump between them successfully?
Yes. So I totally think there's a common thread. I think the common thread is that people that are going to be successful in any of those areas, they don't look at failure as a sign that they're not good and it deterring them from continuing to progress. They just look at obstacles like things they're going to keep chopping down on their way to getting better. And that's something that I just spoke with somebody about a lot recently. Is just like every time you run up on an obstacle and you fail at it, it has nothing to do with your ability to be successful at that in the future. And I think that's the common thread that really makes people win. You just don't develop insecurities around your failures and you just keep moving forward. So I love this stuff. And just to be clear, and I talked to some people about this as well, I fail the majority of the time in my life. I'd say I fail like at least 90% of the time in my life. And then you just win sometimes, and then people look at the wins and they ignore the losses. But I think that's the common thread. And I know you're like that too. It's just like, oh, well, I'm here right now. I'm at the level that I'm at, and I'm just going to keep getting better. And you just keep looking forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's you almost have to disassociate between whatever it is that you're doing. Like you have to disassociate between the failure and you as a person.
Yeah.
Like just because you
Yeah.
failed, that doesn't mean that you're just a crap person, you can't do anything. It means you haven't developed the skills or the traits or whatever it is to be successful at that particular thing yet. But it doesn't mean that you can't learn from whatever that was that you failed at and then move on to something else. I mean, I talked yesterday actually. We were recording a session for a summer school program that we're doing on YouTube. It's like free
Hmm.
summer school for kids. and the topic was
Sweet.
failure. And I said in my gymnastics career, like by any measurable standard, my gymnastics career was not a success. Like my collegiate career, there was injuries. I didn't compete very much. I was cut from the team a couple times. Like it was not a success on paper. But the things that I learned throughout that entire process are the only reason that I'm reasonably successful in business and speaking and coaching and the other things I'm doing now. I just applied those same lessons and character traits differently. You know what I mean? But if
Definitely.
I had taken that experience and said, "Oh, I just suck at this," where would we be today?
That's a really good point. I never thought about it in that way. It's the disassociation. Just because you did something unsuccessfully, that doesn't mean you're unsuccessful. It seems pretty
Yeah,
obvious, but you're right. A lot of people really own that. And it just starts to build on this narrative of who they're going to become or who they are. It's just not accurate.
yeah, yeah. That's crazy. So
That's
okay,
awesome.
yeah. All right. So I'll get back on track. So, you
I love it.
started talking about your gymnastics career. Obviously, you had a super successful gymnastics career. And don't even sandbag on me. Give me the quick rundown, like medals. What'd you do in gymnastics? Not this time, but last time you went on this journey. What happened?
Yeah. All right. So I made three world teams. I was a world medalist and one of two people ever to medal in the history for USA Gymnastics on the rings at a World or Olympics. Um, I won NCAA two times. I won the US Championships like four or five times. Won the Winter Cup a handful of times. Won Big Tens a couple times. I'm in the Ohio State Hall of Fame. Um, I don't know what else did I do. Um,
I just want to make sure
uh,
the viewer. Did you catch that? He said, "Oh, I won, championship 4 or 5 times. I don't even know. It was just can't even count anymore."
It's just been such a long career.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, honestly though, the truth is that I wasn't that great when I was younger, but when I got to Ohio State, by the time my sophomore year came around, I really did start to kind of go up. And those were the results based on what most people would consider the results. But yeah, that was the end outcome.
nice, nice. And then, how long has it been since you retired from your professional
Yes.
gymnastics career?
5 years. So it's been 5 years since I retired. And because you were with me right around this time.
Yeah,
When I retired hard. Like I was just like, oh, I'm never going upside down again.
yeah,
7 days later, I launched a company, like after I retired. Like so it's
yeah.
just like, you know how I am. And I retired hard. So 5 years.
That's crazy. And so just from the perspective of a gymnast, right? And just
Yeah.
for all of the people out there who might be watching this and have never done gymnastics, it's not like, John Roethlisberger always says it's not like golf. You can't take a
Hmm.
break for 5 years and just snap your fingers and you come back. Like that doesn't happen. I mean, if you take a break and the pandemic was honestly a great representation of this. There were guys
Yeah.
that were at the top of their game and then they didn't practice for 6 months. They came back. The first month looked like they were newborn giraffes, like they'd never done this before.
Yes.
I mean, your air awareness leaves you,
Yep.
your conditioning, because there's a difference between lifting weights and doing home conditioning and handstands and all that, and being in the
Oh
shape
yeah.
of a gymnast and doing skill specific strength. It's just different. So
So different.
we'll get into that. But I guess my first question is, okay, you retired for 5 years. You retired hard, like you said. You had a successful business career. Um,
Hmm.
why in the world would you stress yourself to come back like that?
Yeah. So that's the question. So ultimately, and not to get too out there, but it's the truth of what I believe. I really believe that I'm, an energetic being, a ball of energy that rented this meat suit, walking around this earth, living the human experience, and I just choose crazy things to do because I love accumulating experiences and being able to truly feel into all these different experiences. And I asked myself, I'm physically capable of doing gymnastics again. Why not throw myself back into the fire and see what I can learn? And the real macro view of that and the zoomed out view of that is that I think the majority of athletes end their career in a very stressful way, right? Whether it ended well or it didn't end well, the recollection of the career is just like this huge stressful experience that they almost I'd say, and I don't know if you agree with this, I'd say the majority of athletes would recall more negativity than positivity in their career. The ones that can't reflect and see the bigger view, I think eventually you reflect and see the bigger view, but So for that being the case, I wanted to step back in this thing and say, can I throw myself back into the fire of gymnastics and use what I've learned now with emotional intelligence and mindset, and really pin myself up against a very tangible, measurable obstacle and watch my mind scramble and see if I can get it organized and take myself all the way back, by utilizing these mindset strategies and skill set that I've developed over this time. I just thought it was such an easy way to expedite the process of me learning, because you know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. There's easy ways to wiggle out, there's easy ways to pivot, and you're not really pinned up against a wall. And I was like, this is a wall. There's a date that
Yeah.
ironically got moved. But there's a date. Let me throw myself in this fire and see if I can come out of this thing on top.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And for the record, I would totally agree with you. I think that most
Right?
athletes, particularly in our sport, I think gymnastics has such a harsh culture. You're always
Mm,
chasing something. You're never doing it for the fun of doing it. Like you start that way, and then at a certain point, it stops being for the fun of the sport. And I mean, I remember
yeah.
actually, I had a distinct moment in my career where I had gotten cut from the team at Michigan, and my whole goal for like 2 years was don't get cut, don't get cut, don't get cut. And it was
Yep.
always running away from something. And it was always pressure and anxiety because I knew everything I was doing in the gym was being watched. I knew it counted. I knew it was important. And it took the fun out of it. And then
Yeah.
one day after I got cut again, I
Hmm.
actually decided I'm just going to pick something that's just crazy that probably won't happen, but is inspiring and exciting to me. I said, okay, my new goal is not going to be to run away from getting cut. It's going to be to run towards becoming an All American. And it never
Whew.
happened, but that year, actually, ironically enough, that was the year that I was on track. Even the coaches were saying, you're going to make the team this year. And then I had my injury with my wrist, and
Yeah.
it took me out of it.
Remember.
But it was a totally different experience. And I think it's for a similar reason as what you're describing. I just stopped having this negative view of I have to achieve this, and I just said, you
Yep.
know what would be cool? Like, you know what would be exciting and fun if I could do it? And I picked that thing to lock onto instead.
Man, that is very powerful. That is like a really, really big deal. It's you stepping out of operating from a place of fear and stepping into operating from a place of abundance. That is like, I think, just the answer to life is when you just start stepping into opportunities like that, then your energy and your success and then the enjoyment in the process is so much better.
Yeah.
So that's so good.
Yeah. So one question that I just thought of while you were describing your
Yeah.
process and your journey was, you know, you said that you're always looking for that next adventure, that
Yeah.
next journey, that next exciting thing. Do you feel like the best parts of life are kind of lived on that side of things?
I feel like, at least for me, my overall end goal in life is to just accumulate experiences and to deeply feel those experiences. And when I can accumulate many different experiences, in a lot of different areas, I feel like that's the total wealth that I'm trying to get. So, yeah, and honestly, I think that the best experiences are had in the highest stakes situations. So forever, I'm
Mm.
just going to be putting myself in very, very high stake situations. And I love that. It just really makes you function up. And it puts you in a situation where it's a do or die, it's a knife fight, you're going to live or you're going to die. And I've just kind of rewired my experience with that. Instead of fearing that, I've now found a way to just love that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So you talked about this new kind of reasoning, your new why for coming back to gymnastics.
Yeah.
It was for that experience. And I can
Hmm.
imagine that's a very stark contrast to why you used to do it. So can you walk through some
Oof.
of just the differences that you noticed in the training itself and your mindset? Maybe even physically you noticed
Yes.
differences, I don't know, but what were the differences just for no other reason than the different reasoning and the different mental anchor that you started with?
Totally. And let's expose the difference right now. So we
Yeah.
just talked about the reasoning and the mental anchor for this time around. The reasoning and the mental anchor before is exactly what you said. So we start out doing this for fun, but at some point we reach a certain level of success. And I watch this happen to athletes all the time. You reach a certain level of success, and then all of a sudden you start to identify with that success. And all of a sudden you start to hold on to that success and contain that success and guarantee that success, and you hold it tighter and tighter and tighter until you are suffocating your opportunity. And
Wow.
ultimately, I had a lot of great times throughout my career, but that's what happened, right? I reached a level of success, it became my identity, and I was frantically trying to not lose that success. Whether it was the money that I was making or whatever it was, I was trying to not lose it. And the second you're in that energy, you die. So that's the contrast of where I was. And now it's what I just described. Let's throw myself in this fire and see if I can gather up all these really cool experiences and see if I can do this from a place of abundance. So immediately the shift was this. There was not one day, let's just say that I've trained 7 days a week, and the majority of those days, 2 times a day, every single day for 9 straight months. And there wasn't one time that I didn't want to train or I even felt tired to go into training. Not one time, period.
Wow.
Over the course of that, I lost 16 pounds too. So it's not like I was in a caloric surplus, but I just was in high energy, high abundance, and I felt incredible heading into the gym and doing this thing. And again, we're talking about an athlete that's now 32 years old. So just that difference alone. And let's talk about before. Before, I'd say 50% of the time I was dreading walking into the gym. So just that mental anchor can make that big of a difference in your energy and your approach to what you're doing. So I would say that's probably the most obvious difference. Um, the enjoyment of my practice was different. I was able to step back and really be more present and look at my coach and look at my teammates and say, let's just have fun, guys. Right? This is the last time we're ever going to do this in our entire lives. Let's really, really sink in and enjoy this. And I was taking a lot away from each day, having fun with it. Really stressful times, obviously, but mainly I was having those experiences. That was a huge difference. I would say that although I didn't get the score that I wanted, I think I'm the strongest I've ever been in my entire life right now in gymnastics. And I think that's honestly because of this mental anchor that I'm bringing to the gym. I think that I've released I've given myself the ability to approach things differently instead of making myself work within this specific box.
Mm.
So before, because I was in lack, right, and I was scared of losing it, I was sticking to all the strategies that I knew worked and that I was using over my entire career. And I was making judgment calls and training plan calls based on my past experience. This time around, I was just letting it fly. And it was scary. I had to let go of lifting weights. I had to lose a lot of weight because it just seemed like that's what my body wanted to do. But I just allowed my internal intelligence to guide me instead of articulating this really overproduced training plan. And that allowed me, I think, to reach a higher level in strength than I ever have in my entire life. So that's another huge, huge thing. And then longevity. I honestly, this is going to sound insane. I think I could do this for another 5 years. I don't know. I
Yeah.
think I could do this for a very long time. And I did experience injuries, but they started to subside the more I just listened to that internal intelligence. So a lot of really powerful stuff.
Man. All right. So let's dig into that. So one thing that you said is you always wanted to go into the gym. You were training 7 days a week, twice a day, and you never once wanted to avoid that. I think for anybody who's trying to reach that high performance, high productivity benchmark in their lives and whatever it is that they do, whether it's business, whether it's their career, whether it's athletics, whatever, that's the goal, right? You want to enjoy the
Yeah.
process and you want it to feel natural. How much of that is picking the right thing? Because obviously you love gymnastics,
Mm.
you enjoy it. How much of it is picking the right thing? And how much of it is just telling yourself, I'm detached from the outcome. I'm grateful to be here. I'm not going to over plan this. I'm just going to enjoy this for the experience. Or is it both? Is it a combination? Like, what variables go into that?
This is the question, isn't it? For us,
Yeah.
for entrepreneurs, I,
Yeah.
I I think. Um, so to give you a very straightforward answer, it's not as much about picking the right thing. It's more about the other side of it. That
Mm.
I am just here to have the human experience, and I'm excited and curious to see what's going to unfold for me today. And I'm choosing this specific activity to prime that potential experience. Living in that energy is a completely unstoppable thing. Now, we'll take that with a grain of salt. If you're doing something that is really, really just like not in line for you, it's going to be harder for you to slip into that energy because we're all in this journey of being able to live in that energy. But I believe if you're truly a master living in that energy, you could do anything because your wealth and what you're trying to aggregate is experiences. So anything that's different, anything that's out of the ordinary just gives you another opportunity to get a different taste. So I really believe it's all about focusing on that energy, and then allowing that energy to dictate the right thing.
Wow. So it's not necessarily the thing. You're really just leveraging the thing to actualize that mind.
Yes,
You're getting to that place of gratitude and enjoying the experience just by leveraging whatever it is you happen to be doing.
exactly. An energetic being living the human experience, deciding to do gymnastics because I know gymnastics is the best tool to prime all this crazy stuff right now,
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
right?
Awesome. So, how did I'm just trying to imagine you going into the gym for the first time after you make this decision. What did you do? Did you write up a training plan? Did you just kind of go in and play around one day? Was it a hard did you play with it in your mind first, or was it like I'm doing this from day one? You made that decision. What was that like?
I played. I played a lot. I was like, oh, should I do this? Should I not do it? I was stuck in this mindset of, and again, this was the big shift, and this is why there's such a blessing that I did this. I was stuck in the mindset of what's the right strategy for my life, and I was
Mm,
trying to predict how, if I was to follow the gymnastics path or keep following the business path, what would make me happier in the end. And there was just never an answer for that. I debated that for months, like months. But there just wasn't an answer, right? It was relinquishing the need to have that answer and just enjoy the moment and just, again, continuing to accumulate these experiences and using them as tools to be happy in life. So I dabbled, I played. The reason why I was so quiet about it is because I had no idea whether it would ever be a reality or not. Because it's like, it's one thing to be able to do an iron cross and a planche and a Maltese. And then it's another thing to be able to do an entire routine. And then it's another thing to be able to do one of the hardest routines in the world. You know how that game goes.
mm.
It's like those are entirely different worlds. So I just kind of waited and waited and waited until it was real. Um, and I realized I could do it like in November, basically. And then in November, I'm like, all right, I can probably do this. I don't know if I don't know how far, like if I'm really going to be ready to come back and take that spot. I thought we had two spots. I was like,
Mm.
I don't know how far it'll be, but I'm ready. And that's when it got like really real. And then it just became about perfecting those skills. But that journey was hard. Like, if I wish my coach could be sitting right here and we could talk about it. It took so long for the body to let go of the bodybuilder body and to just fall into line with working on rings and then recovering from that work consistently. It would be like I would do a hard ring day on a Monday, and then for some reason I would feel recovered by Wednesday, but then Thursday I would be sore again, like I just worked out Wednesday. And then I couldn't train again until Saturday. It was just this crazy thing where my body was not getting consistent with that. So that was a big struggle. And then choosing the right strategy for a routine was a big struggle. Do I do something really difficult? Do I try to do something easier and cleaner? Which skills do I choose? All of that was really, really hard.
Yeah, I mean, just again from a gymnast perspective, some of the let me tell you what happened. So I didn't know your routine until I saw it on TV.
Yeah.
Right? I wasn't privy to that information. You tripped me all the way out when you did a back kip Maltese as your seventh skill in that routine.
Yeah.
I was sitting here
Yeah.
at the computer. I threw my pen down and started laughing because I was like, "Who does this guy think he is?" Like seven. It just for those of you who aren't gymnasts, most guys do that first or second skill because it's just so freaking hard. And yeah, that tripped me all the way out. So, but that's a good point though. You know, those skills are not they're not the type of skills that your average retired gymnast can still kind of play with and still do. I mean, even Azarian Maltese, if your elbows aren't ready for that, you're gonna blow something out in the first 3 days. I'll still go back in the gym every once in a while and play around with it, and I'll do one and I'm done for the week. Because I'm not doing
Yeah.
the physical therapy and the rehab and the things that's
Yep.
necessary to be able to maintain that. So what was that like almost starting from step one again? Because I know for me, whenever I go into the gym and I start trying stuff and playing around and I can't do something as well as I used to be able to, I get super frustrated and I'm like, I want to start training 7 days, 8 days a week right now because
Yeah.
I'm frustrated
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
So what was that like? Because I'm sure there was a long build up to getting where you are now.
Really good point. And that was this entire game. Train as much as you possibly can without training too much. And that is so hard for me. And you and I probably share that. I know we share
Yeah.
that, is we want to do more than we should all the time.
Mhm.
That was really hard. And it took a lot of just belief that it was going to be there. I knew it would be there, but it took weeks for me to just do a Maltese again. And
Mm.
that's like, not that, I mean, it's hard, but for us or
Yeah.
whatever, it's not that hard. It took a really, really long time. I knew it would be there though. I was like, there is no way it won't be there. And I
Hmm.
know that all of this is just because I have been lifting weights like a maniac for 4 straight years, and my joints are just stiff. But I knew it would be there, but it was really, really hard. I wish I could have just ripped into it and just did as much as I possibly wanted to, but I knew I would blow something out if I did. So that was the entire game this whole time.
Yeah. How do you balance ambition and work ethic and grind with playing smart and being strategic?
Yeah. The question I would ask myself is what must be done in order to get better? And I would try to just do that. What must be done in order to get better? And then how do I try to improve in other areas by using my mind and using my recovery and different modalities like that? I mean, that was just the entire game. Like I would sit there and I would have taken 6 turns and it'd be like, if I take this 7 turn, is it going to get me better? It's like, okay, maybe it'll get me like 0.05% better. What's the risk of getting injured? My elbow already feels a little weird. So if I take this next turn, is it worth the risk reward ratio? And the answer would be no, and I would just sit down. And that was so, so, so hard to do because I wanted to do 77 more. But
Right.
that was just the whole game. And I didn't learn this. This is going to sound crazy. I didn't learn this till 3 weeks before the meet. A healthy body is just stronger than an overconditioned body. That sounds obvious. Let's put it this way. A healthy body is stronger than a body that can do more volume consistently.
Mm.
Like there's just nothing like being healthy and having your elbows feel juicy and the shoulders feel right. There's nothing like that. And I learned that like 3, 4 weeks before the meet. I was like, damn. But the last 3, 4 weeks, I was riding this crazy wave of being super under conditioned, but just believing that the fact that I was getting healthier and healthier would render a positive result. It just took so much confidence, and it was just ripping me apart because it's just not how I lived my life in the past. But I had to just listen. It was a crazy, crazy game.
It's amazing because I think especially people who tend to be high achievers in the first place, people who tend to want to go into athletics or business, you want to feel like you can control it, right? You want to feel like
Yeah,
you have the power to affect the outcome. And I think and we do to some extent, but there's so
right.
much to be said for just letting the process happen and just getting out of your own way. I mean, I literally remember
Yes.
my freshman year at Michigan, I learned to bounce cross, right?
Hmm.
And just Maltese bounce cross. And I had been working on it for months and I couldn't quite get it. I just wasn't quite strong enough for it. And then one day I was feeling kind of sick in the evening, and so I went to bed at literally like 7 p.m. and I got 11 or
Mm.
12 hours of sleep. And I felt so good the next day. I went into the gym, first turn, Maltese bounce cross, held it for like 5 seconds, wasn't even difficult. And I was like,
Yep.
telling me all I needed was a freaking nap this whole time. But it just goes to show,
Yep.
you can work as hard as you want, but at a certain point, there's diminishing returns. And at a certain point, you just have to, like you said, have the confidence that your body will do what it needs to do if you give it what it needs. And that's the problem most people have
Yeah.
is we just don't give it what it needs.
Yeah. And that was this whole thing. There's two voices, I think. You've got the voice that says more, 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 and then you have the true voice of your internal intelligence. And we are just developing the skill set to learn how to listen to the right voice. And that voice, the right voice, is never wrong, ever. You just got to be able to listen to it. And it's always there too. It's just
Mm,
when we're early on in the journey of listening to that voice, it's just quiet. It's just like a whisper. And the other voice is screaming, and this one's a
yeah.
whisper. And all of a sudden, that starts to shift, and the volume starts to shift. And then eventually, you can hear that voice really well, and you just use it as a guide and just believe it no matter what. But yeah, I'm with you. And I want to piggyback off of what you just said. There was this time because I wasn't, getting as strong as I wanted to as quickly as I wanted to in this time. And there was this moment where same thing kind of happened to me. I was tired and I slept like 12 or 13 hours and I walked into the gym and I said, there's no way I can get myself elevated enough
Mm,
to a place where I think it's going to take in order for me to do a second half today. I was going to do a second half of a routine. I said, I wonder if I can do this asleep. Like, I wonder if I can lay on the ground and try to fall asleep and get up and not try to hype myself up and almost ease into this and unlock a different kind of energy. Because I know I don't have the hype energy that I'm used to. So
mm,
let me see if I can just unlock this deeper, more source based energy And I actually found more strength down in this calm, slowed heart rate energy than I did from trying to elevate myself emotionally in order to be able to perform at that top level. I learned this weird lesson, and me and Yoder, my teammate, talked about this like when I do rings. He gets crazy, I go to sleep. And that's just what worked. I would almost try to go to sleep into the routine, and I just had way more juice down there. I never would have found that out if I didn't come back and do this.
Wow. Have you ever, just out of curiosity, have you ever read a book called The Inner Game of Tennis?
No, I haven't, but it does sound familiar.
It's pretty interesting because he talks about a similar philosophy. Basically, what he teaches people how to do is when they play tennis, and he's written a bunch of different like offshoots of the same book for different sports. But he
Hmm.
says instead of teaching people the technique of how to flick their wrist, of how to do the proper swing, all that stuff, he just says focus on the laces, the seams of the tennis ball. Just focus on those as much as
Yeah.
you possibly can, and your body will figure it out because you've been told the
Yes.
proper technique. You've been told how to do it right. You understand it, but you're thinking so much about it that your body can't actually do it. But if you know it and you internalize it and you just let it happen, it'll happen. And I found that to be very true in my gymnastics as well. I think I'm literally a better tumbler when I try to not tumble. When I just am like having fun and just hanging out in the gym and bouncing
Yep.
around and I say, "Oh, I'm going to go do, I wonder if I could do a double double today." Like my timing is better, my technique is better, my form is better when I literally don't think about it. And it's this crazy
Yeah.
thing that like once you get it, leave it alone.
Yeah. Exactly. Man, I think this is the biggest fallacy in coaching right now. I don't want to say every, obviously. The majority of coaches overcoach. It's irrelevant. It's actually detrimental. All you need to do is set the magnet at the top for that athlete and guide the athlete to the top of the magnet. That's it. We don't need to be down here working on the angle of the knee and working on explosion out of the toes so the hurdle can be higher. All of that stuff is so far deeply rooted in the details that will never translate to the actual result. What's the result? It's the end skill you're trying to do. What's the result of that? It's to win the competition. And what's the result of that? To have some fun in this game, right? So it's like the higher you can just set the magnet at the very top, let your body automatically organize itself and just be guided to the top by A, the ingrained knowledge that you already have, but B, that internal natural ability to just let this thing go. It's just so crazy to me to have an athlete take a turn to get down and to hear an outside perspective on his hip angle and to think that that comment is going to create success. It's just not how it works as a human being, in my opinion. So I think about this and I talk about this all the time.
That that's really interesting because I want to go back to something that you just said that kind of caught my ear. You said the result of the correction is to try and get a better end skill, whatever you were just what skill you were trying to perform. The result of that is to try and win the competition. The result of that is to have some fun in the whole game. What happens if you start with having fun in the whole game? So you have fun in the whole game
Yes,
all the way down here. How does that affect everything else
yes.
up the chain?
It auto organizes, it gets a lot easier, and it's a lot of fun. That's life. This is what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that as long as you just keep it at the top, and again, this is what we're talking about, right? We're energetic beings, living the human experience, choosing to do this thing, then everything just takes care of itself as long as you remain in that energy. So I'm with you. We have the intelligence. The body has the intelligence, and it's all inside of us already. We don't need to get super crazy into trying to manipulate these details down here. It just breaks the process.
Yeah, yeah. One other question I had from listening to what you were talking about, you said we have those two voices, that inner voice that says do
Hmm.
more, I'm in control, I can control the outcome. And then the other voice that says no, just follow your internal guidance. You know what to do if you
Yep.
get out of your own way. Is that an ego thing? Is that a learning to just accept how do you navigate that?
I think it's an ego thing. And the craziest thing is the more successful you were listening to the wrong voice, the harder it ever is to listen to the internal voice.
Uh,
The ultimate challenge is to have somebody who is just praised, they're at the very top, and they did it because of the wrong voice through this grind and whatever it was. The hardest challenge is to have that person say, I recognize I became successful with this voice, but if I want true success and a true experience of what it feels to be a champion, I'm going to drop all that already had me win in the past, and I'm going to go and listen to this other thing. It's so darn hard. When you don't win, it's not that hard. Be like, well, that didn't even work anyways. So let me just try to trust my
Try
intuition. But
something
yes,
different.
it is exactly. It is so hard. But the thing that I recognize through this whole process, I know Sam McCulloch recognizes this. I can feel it, and him and I talk about this all the time. It doesn't feel good to win by listening to the wrong voice, because the wrong voice is rooted in fear.
Mm,
And every time I've won in my career out of that place of fear, holding on to making sure that I was protecting my reputation and all of that stuff. It just never felt right. I'd rather lose listening to my real voice, sitting in the moment, enjoying this thing. I'd rather lose like that than win the other way. And I know Sam has recognized that now in his life, and I know that's the only reason why he's still training. And I know that's his approach for this Olympics. It's let me like actually have this experience, and I'm really going to sit in my true voice and feel this presence and really, really ride this thing out the right way.
yeah, I think it goes back to what you value. Because if you value
Yeah.
that idea that you're the one that's doing this, that your grind, your hustle, your whatever it is leading to this success, you're going to keep doing that. If you, but it's
Yep.
the same thing of like worshiping money or worshiping like some other materialistic thing. You might get it, you might, but it's never going to be enough. I feel like people who go that route, they might attain some of their goals, but then they get there and they're like, okay, well, what can I win next? What can I do next? What can I do next?
Yep.
And they never feel fulfilled by the actual experience. But on the other hand, if you value
Yeah.
the experience itself or that process or that journey, then you still might achieve your goal. There's probably the same likelihood of achieving the goal, but you'll actually be able to enjoy it and you won't feel empty at the
Yep.
end once you get to the top of the mountain.
Yeah. And I think you're actually more likely to achieve the goal in that energy if you can remain in that energy daily.
Yeah.
So it's like, how could you lose with that? It's more enjoyable during, and I think you're more likely to win. Because I'll say this, if you ask yourself, what's the most fragile approach to success? The most fragile approach to success is built in just running it from the ego because it worked in the past. I'll just keep hammering this thing in and not listen to my true intelligence. That's fragile, and that can be shook. It can be shook by age. It can be shook by a different environmental variable that you didn't account for. All that stuff can be shook. So it works, but it's fragile. So I think you're actually more likely to win on the macro view in the long term by listening to the internal voice. And it's much more fun,
Right, right. So why not? Like,
right?
why not? Exactly.
Exactly.
That's good. So, okay, before we get even deeper into some of the mindset stuff and the training stuff,
Yeah.
I know there's some people out there who are watching this and they're the gymnastics buffs, they're the fitness buffs, and they're going to want some of the tactics, the tangible strategies from a
Yeah.
fitness and nutrition standpoint that helped you pull this off. Because you said yourself, you're 32 now. You know, you're not 21 years old anymore where you can sleep for 2 hours and still pull off a range routine like that. Like, there's some
Right.
other things at play. So, give me some of those tactics.
Yeah. Um, so again, first and foremost, this energy is 100x valuable, but we do have to play in the nutrition and the training. So let's just talk about the difference between training for aesthetics and building a physique that's visually appealing, and then let's talk about training for performance. Those are two very, very different things. Training for aesthetics, you can manipulate your macros and decrease carbohydrates to reduce body fat and all of that. Training for performance, the number one goal is to make sure you have enough fuel to do the workload required in order to accomplish the skill. That is the most important thing. And it is correlation, not causation, that a lean body means a successful athlete. Don't. Don't chase the lean body if it hurts the performance. I know you know that well, and I know that well, and I've walked that thin line before, like unnecessarily lean. You
Mm.
don't have to chase that body in order for the performance. So having enough, so tracking your macros from a fat, carbs, and protein standpoint, and making sure you have enough fuel to carry out the desired workload that's going to get you the goal. Number one. Number two, from a workload standpoint, being able to truly listen how much is too much from an injury standpoint. But then when you're building all of these drills and all this complementary training, if you can't very quickly, within 3 seconds, describe how this cross training exercise is going to translate directly to making you stronger in that skill, you shouldn't be doing it. If you could just do that skill over and over again as closely as possible to what it's going to feel like and be required of you in the competition, that's the goal. So I think a lot of athletes get way too far out where they want to be able to do the Maltese and they're working grip strength with a dumbbell. I'm like, dude, it's just way too distant. It just doesn't matter. If you could just train the Maltese over and over again and create a structure that progresses you through the Maltese, that's the most effective way to get the Maltese. And then I'd say the third piece in this whole thing is create a surplus. So if you're doing 10 skills in a routine and you're doing 10 1 rep maxes, it's going to be very, very challenging in order to be able to do your 10th skill with a degree of focus, vigor, and attention because it's the 10th skill in a routine, right? So you need to start to create surplus. So you need to exceed the demand of each skill by at least 20, 30%. So if your first skill requires um, X amount of effort, you need to train that skill with 130% demand, and you need to be able to perform it at a much higher level so you can be able to do the 10th skill, be able to do it effectively. I think a lot of that stuff gets left on the table as well. And I learned this the hard way through this competition process that I did that in my training, and then the extra demand and the drain of the competition was even more. And
Mm.
then I had to make an adjustment from day one into day two, which I didn't account for. So all of that stuff really plays in. But if you don't pay attention to those things, I do think you're in for a rude awakening.
Man, one thing that I really want to hit on that you just said, and I want to touch on this one in particular because I think
Hmm.
it's applicable in fitness and in athletics, but it's just as applicable outside of the gym. And basically, what you said is do whatever you want to get better at. Like just
Yeah.
whatever you want to get better at, just do that. And I remember I was probably 16 and I just started competing. So for those of you who don't know my story, I started competing at 16 years old in gymnastics. I went from recreational to level
It's
10,
crazy.
college after that. So yeah, it was a quick start, but I always had poor endurance. I was a good tumbler and I was great at floor, but I didn't have great endurance. Like I was just gassed at the end of a floor routine. And I went to my coach at the time and I said, man, should I be running miles? Should I be running laps? Should I be swimming? Should I be doing this? Like, what's it going to take? And he said, more floor routines. I was like, what do you
Yep.
mean? I need to do more. He said, no, 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 no. You should do more of what you want to get good at. And it blows my mind how simple it is, and yet how many people don't do it. When I started coaching at Michigan, I was volunteer coaching here. All of the guys loved the low rings, right? And they would do the jump Maltese, and they get a spot, and they do 3 sets of 3. And I'm not knocking that; like that's a great way to train for strength. But then they'd go up on the real rings, and I'd hit them. Okay, dip the toes, 3 body position, 1, and they'd
Yep.
be all these things wrong. And then they would be like, I don't understand. I put so much time into it. I said, no, you didn't. You put so much time into practicing the position. I haven't seen you do a back up rise Maltese on the rings in a month. It's not the same
Yep.
thing. So
Not the same thing.
that's just such a big point. Whatever it is you want to get good at, if it's making money, if it's entrepreneurship, if it's business, if it's fitness, just do more of that.
Yeah. Exactly. And the parallel in entrepreneurship, and you know this, is what are your revenue generating activities? And
Mm-hmm.
we both have seen and both have done activities that just are not the thing we need to focus on this moment to grow the company. I mean, that's it, right? It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like we're going to redesign our logo. It's like, really? You need to book more sales calls. Like
Right.
you need to book more sales calls, right? Like the logo, sure, you could redesign it. I'm sure it's going to have some benefit down the road, but you're right. We need to focus on the thing that matters. Um, and all the way at the end of that, let's talk about like all the way at the end of that, what it's like for, so an analogy in what you're saying in gymnastics, though, still, me being able to do a routine in the gym, though, that I always train at, that I've been training at for 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
at 11 a.m., and I just have 2 hard-boiled eggs and 2 pieces of Ezekiel bread and 1 coffee in my stomach after 9 hours of sleep, but I just woke up 4 hours ago. The difference between that to doing a routine on NBC in front of a crowd in Texas in an arena that I don't have the spatial awareness of the roof at
Mm-hmm.
9 p.m. after 3 meals, after taking a nap, when I've never took a nap in the past 5 straight years. Just the difference in that is insane. That's the I think the pinnacle of what you're talking about right now is you need to get like ridiculously close. ridiculously close to the actual thing that you want to perform. And even then, even a margin of 4 or 5% could make this binary thing, this yes or no, a no. That's why you got to do the actual thing if you want to get better at that thing.
Yeah, and I think that's where what you were talking about, kind of training above and beyond, I think that's where that even comes in handy. Like I remember
Yeah.
I saw a video one time, this was years ago, of the LSU women's gymnastics team, and some
Hmm.
girl was doing her beam routine, and there was somebody standing next to the beam with band cymbals, clapping the band
Hmm.
cymbals,
Hmm.
just trying to do like
Exactly.
throwing foam blocks, like everything they could possibly do to distract her. And the whole purpose was, okay, if you can do this, you can do it in this other, and it's still not perfect. There's still other
Right.
variables that you just can't replicate. But that whole idea of train, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training, right? And we know that.
Yes.
So how
Perfect.
can you just prepare, over prepare to the point where you can try and account for as much of that as possible?
Yeah. Wow, that's really good. But yeah, and then even in the end, then it's all right. Let's let go of the outcome and watch
Mm-hmm.
this thing unfold. Like we got popcorn, man. I'm sitting back here just watching the movie of my life. Like, oh, I don't know what's gonna happen either, man.
Right. You never know, and that's the thing.
Right.
I heard Gary Vee talk about this actually, because he said a lot of people have that indecision and they don't know what to do, and he said you never know what the other decision would have brought you. So
Hmm.
why would you stress out about that? It's kind of the same thing you just said. It's like, well, here we are in the moment. I've done everything I can possibly do. I don't know what's gonna happen, so why am I gonna worry about it? Just do it and like
Exactly.
just see what happens. So that's
Exactly.
that's a crazy one. But okay, so let me switch gears here and ask you this. I want to know, what was the most surprising thing that you learned throughout the entire process?
Oof. Huh.
And I want to preface this question by saying, again, this is somebody who you heard the accolades earlier. Like this is not an individual who hasn't been in this position before. So these lessons presumably come from that distinct place of the new mindset, the new mentality, the new why, all of that.
I don't have a solid collected answer, but I'll just kind of candidly speak about what's coming to me. The power of your internal intelligence, more than articulating a plan and being able to listen to that voice. I mean, that was just mind blowing to me. Night two, having an injury, just like being in the back at 9 p.m., laying on the floor saying, like, this is my warm up. I'm going to lay here and let my body take over. That internal intelligence. And then the other thing that's coming to me right now is just the distinct difference between setting your energy and then allowing that energy to take you through your day instead of thinking that I guess I guess not getting down into the weeds of these details of do I need more caffeine, less caffeine, diet, training plan, all of that, and just really truly understanding that being in the right energy and having the right why is just gasoline on the fire. It's the steroids of the situation. Like it really is an unbeatable thing. Just making sure that your day is set with that kind of energy and then just going to work with the right reasoning behind what you're doing. That stuff was just so powerful. I've never, ever, ever felt anything like that before. So I would say that that was the most shocking thing and the most valuable thing I gained from this whole experience.
Yeah, and just to make sure I loop it back to a
Yeah,
super practical, because I want people to be able to look at this, whether they're a gymnast, whether they're an athlete, whether they're a business person. I want somebody to watch this and be like, oh, I can do that. So we've been
agreed.
talking a lot about that internal intelligence. We've been talking a lot about listening to your own voice, and I know we said part of that was kind of dismantling the ego. We said part of it was detaching from the outcome. Is there anything that we're missing as far as how to actually tap into that internal intelligence?
It's not easy to tap into that internal intelligence. It just takes a very long time, I believe, of work. And that work is meditation, but meditation is just a practice to help you learn the process of disassociation and witnessing thoughts and emotion. The practice of being able to do that. So, the way I always envision thoughts and emotion is that you are an energetic being and your brain is a tool, this incredibly powerful tool that if you know how to type in the right codes, you can get that tool to work for you. The majority of humans are actually a victim to this overpowerful tool that they can't even control. The brain's firing thoughts and it's firing emotions and it's creating false realities for you and it's doing all of these things. And you get to decide, am I a participant in that chaos or am I observing that chaos and remaining in control in seat number one? So, working that skill set through the practice of meditation is what allows you to be able to listen to the true internal voice instead of getting caught up in these crazy thought and emotion cyclones. And that practice takes time. But the second you realize that that's what the entire game of life's about, you just put your foot on the gas in that practice. So, practically, how do you get better at listening to that voice? Practice the witness and observer state to your thoughts and emotions, knowing that you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, and you can witness and observe them. And then you can use your brain for the incredible, powerful tool that it is.
Wow, that's really powerful. And the only thing I might add to that is the way that I kind of snuck in the side door with being able to do that is I
Mm-hmm.
did it with other people before I did it with me. Because we all know it's so
Mm,
difficult to observe ourselves. Like self awareness is really hard and it takes time to build up.
so hard.
I went to there was a Circle K gas station in Ann Arbor that was really close to where me and a bunch of the team guys lived. And we went and we made a
Mm-hmm.
Circle K run with one of my buddies. This was probably 3 years ago or so. And he went in there. He went in there and he bought a beer. He bought some sort of candy, and then he bought like an energy drink. And I was like, wow, the relaxation and the dopamine from the alcohol, the caffeine and the energy from the energy drink, and then the sugar and the extra dopamine from the candy. And I was like, he's not in control. He doesn't even know it. He doesn't
Yeah.
even see it. But he's not living
Oh,
his own
yeah.
life right now. Something else up here that he doesn't even know about is living his
Yeah.
life right now. And he's about the whole experience that he has that entire evening is going to be based on that other thing, not
Yep.
him. And when I saw that, I was like, I need to start taking a look in the mirror. Like it shifted
Yeah.
me because I was like, if he's doing that, what am I not even aware of that's running my
Yes,
life? And that's a crazy awakening to have.
it is. And I want to add one thing to that. And I'll add this and say this for both of us because I know you feel the same exact way. No matter how good you get at this game, you will never see it all.
Mm.
And people that get good at this game, it doesn't mean they're an expert. And I like to say this every single time I have these kinds of conversations that I am simply just a student of life, sharing my experience as it unravels for me. Because what I know more than anything is I know nothing. That is what I know, right? So I do think it's tricky when you start to get kind of good at this. It's really important to remember that it is so much easier to see other people's problems than it is to see your own, and we will forever have our own problems no matter how good we get at this. So, just because you become more advanced doesn't mean that you have nothing to fix. And I know I have tons to fix, and I will for the rest of my life. And that's what keeps me excited. But it's just a really important thing to understand because it keeps you hungry and it keeps you digging.
Yeah, and that's an important thing that you just said there too. You said you're excited, like you know you'll never be perfect, and you're excited about that. A lot of people
Yeah.
they say, "Oh, I don't have any problems. Everybody else has problems." But the reason they do that is it's a defense mechanism because they're not excited by trying to reach their potential. They're either intimidated, scared, they don't feel like they can do it, or they're
Yep.
just trying to run away from it. So when you can learn to be excited about challenges, the whole game changes because all of a sudden you're not afraid of failing.
Yes.
Like you're not afraid of anything
Yes.
anymore because it's just exciting. And if you fail, then you'll learn from it. You'll try it again, and it'll be all part of this big, great experience that you're going to have as a human. And you can't lose when you have that mentality.
You just can't lose. And like, just to really explain, so we're talking about some really high level mindset control stuff. And I hate to use the word control, but that's just the easiest word to kind of describe what we're saying. And I can go through this experience, and the other day I'm walking down the street and I'm crossing the street and I had the walk light and the driver didn't see that I had the walk light, so they're trying to turn left and I'm walking across the street and they get super mad at me and they're honking their horn and I got elevated, you know? So it's like I can be so good in certain moments, and then in other moments in something that ridiculous, I got elevated. And for the next 15 to 20 minutes, that tiny, stupid, ridiculous experience, even with the skill set that I developed, that I've deployed at times successfully, I couldn't even use that skill set to bring me down quicker than 15 minutes based on that interaction. So yeah, this is always just going to be a game that we play. And you're right, Burns, you just absolutely nailed it. As long as we're excited and curious and hungry to continue to chop down the tree, we're never going to lose. It's just when we're intimidated by the placement that we're at and we're comparing that placement to other people, and we think that where we are right now dictates our end value, a fixed value, and we're not valuing our ability to be malleable and continue to chop down the tree. Valuing that other side makes this game real uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I'll just say this: it's a game worth playing. It's a game
It
worth
is. What else are we going to do out here in this
right,
life?
right. We're just, I mean, we're all on this rock together. Hurtling through
Right.
space. We might as well play the game, right?
Yeah, let's play, man. Let's play. Let's ride it. See how it goes.
Amen. So all right. I've got a couple smaller topics and little bullet points I want to hit
Yep.
with you. I know we've already covered a bunch of these already. So if you don't have anything extra to add, no worries. We'll go rapid fire through them to kind of finish up here.
Nice.
But energy management. Talk to me about energy management.
Mm. Setting it in the morning, and also understanding that when your energy feels different and it feels lower, you don't have to get it back to this familiar place of high elevation, and you can still take action. And taking that action consistently will just raise your baseline of energy,
That's good. That's good. The more often you do it,
right?
the better you get at it. And also, I've noticed, like, how many times have you not wanted to work out, and then you just go to the gym and you start working out, and 5 minutes in, you're like, I feel back to normal. I'm so glad I did this.
Yep.
So
100% of the time, right? Like, have you
every
ever
time,
worked out and be like, oh, I feel worse? It's never
right?
happened,
Never.
ever. So, so that's important, and I'll nail something right here. Um, but this could be a subject that we could talk about for an hour. But I want to add this in because I think it's cool and I think it's fun. Really, how I look at this whole thing is that you have your environment, which are these potential energies. They're not labeled positive or negative. They're just potential energies that are circulating around you, and then those energies mixing with your perception fires off a thought, right? You decide whether you fire off a positive thought or a negative thought. Whatever that thought is, positive or negative, is going to evoke an emotion inside of you. And based on that thought and emotion combination, generally dictates your action. And then your actions generally rebuild your environment. So if you find a way to hijack one of these places and then just get this whole flywheel being biased for positivity, you're much more likely to have positive thoughts, positive emotions, positive actions, and a positive environment. The easiest place to hijack this whole process and get this flywheel pumping positively is in your actions. So if no matter what, negative thought, negative emotion, positive action, no matter what, uncompromisable, we don't deny, we're just always taking positive action, you're just more likely to influence positive environment, positive thought, positive emotion. So I always think about this flywheel, and we all have people in our lives and have been in places in our lives where this thing gets moving in the wrong direction. And it's like, no matter how great your life is, some people are like, oh, but, and they fire the negative thought, negative emotion, they take a negative action, and then it just skews their environment to be more negative and their perception of their environment to be more negative, and they just get moving the other way. The only way to stop that flywheel from moving in the wrong direction, you have to hijack thought or motion or action, and the easiest place is to hijack action. And you'll just start to see, you'll perceive everything and feel everything positively more because of that hijack of the action.
Yeah, yeah. You can only take so much massive positive action without getting some sort of results with positive emotion, positive
You
thought.
got to get them.
Yeah,
You
it's
can't.
an
Could you
undeniable game at
imagine?
some point.
Could you imagine even thinking that it's even possible to just take like unrelenting positive action, but for the rest of your life, for 90 straight, 100 straight years, you'll still just feel and think negatively, and your entire world would be negatively? It's so ridiculously impossible. Like,
Right,
think
right.
about how crazy that would be.
Man, I was listening to this guy. You should check out his podcast, his YouTube stuff. His name is Alex Hormozy, and he
Yeah,
founded
I
this
know him.
company. Yeah, yeah.
Know of him. Yeah,
He's big time entrepreneur, and I love his
he's
content.
awesome.
And something that I heard him saying was you should put in an amount of action that would make it unreasonable for you to still be bad at something. And the example
Yeah.
he gave is there was this kid that was his neighbor or something. He's getting into sales, and he came to him and he was like, "Oh, I'm so discouraged. I'm failing. I'm not getting it." And he said, "Okay, well, is it unreasonable for you to be bad?" He's like, "No. I mean, I've only been doing this for 6 months. I guess that's still reasonable that I could be bad." He said, "Okay, go put in enough action that it would literally make no freaking sense for you to still be bad, and you won't be bad."
Yeah. 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 Facts. That's really good. It's really good. And think about that just in the fitness realm. Like, how unreasonable would it be if you worked out twice a day and ate according to a program that would fit your goals religiously? How unreasonable would it be that you wouldn't reach your fitness goals? Like, come on. That is simply like it. It's impossible.
Right, right.
And then you combine that with all the other buckets we talked about in the beginning with emotional intelligence and mindset and putting in the work in your business that's fulfilling and then putting the value on relationships and all that other great stuff. It'd be unreasonable for you not to have a high quality life. Completely unreasonable.
Yeah, all starts with the action. What about this one?
Yep.
Strategy, sacrifice, or both?
Strategy, sacrifice, or both.
So basically, working hard or working smart. I think of strategy as you work smart. I think of sacrifice as you go all in, you work really hard. Both is, somewhere in the middle.
Definitely both. Which side does it weigh more on? Um, Well, I'll just put it this way. I think it's pretty dangerous to work in a place where you're energetically unaligned. Um, so the strategy is important, but when you hustle within a framework that you know is like kind of in your wheelhouse, it's not always going to be comfortable, but you know when it's like really like the wrong kind of hustle.
Mm,
And that does take time, but short answer, both. Short answer, both.
love it, love it. Talk to me about focus. You talked about getting into such a zone of focus where your body intuitively knew what to do, right? That internal intelligence. I feel like
Mm,
you can't get there if you're distracted, if you're thinking about 20 different things. We've all seen that
yes.
quote above the doors at the OTC: if you're in the gym, be in the gym. How do you get to that level of focus where you can actually tap into that internal intelligence and just not get distracted?
So this is the question, and we probably don't have a time to go through this whole thing, but we should make an entire video about
Mm-hmm.
what I've written in this computer, which is the parallels between why it works to be successful as an elite athlete and then how that plays out into life. So I think focus is easy to achieve when you have a goal that aligns with your current interests, that is extremely tangible, that has a deadline, there's a public display of the work that you have done or not done. Um, it has a set date that you cannot manipulate. The event will go on with or without you. When you start to put yourself into a situation like that, that's when the body has the opportunity to auto regulate because there's no out, right? There's just no way you can escape that. And I think that's where your body has no choice but to focus. It's really hard to focus when we're not up into something, right? We're not in the fire. It's like, oh, I want to build this business. And the business isn't named. It's kind of this industry, it's kind of that industry. There's no deadline. We have no revenue goal. We have no reason why building that business would truly align with what we want to do on this earth. We have no reason why building this business is a good thing for other people. We have none of these things identified, and we sit there and say, well, why can't we focus on the business? That's exactly why. When you really start to pave all those things out, you just get out of the way. And again, it's a knife fight. If you were going to have a knife fight, and the only way the fight was going to end is one person had to die, and that fight was on September 1st, 2021. You knew what size of the knife, you knew who your opponent was, and nothing was going to stop that fight. You're going to fight or you will be executed. I promise you, you would focus on figuring out how to fight. It's
Wow.
just that's it. And when you can build your life and your goals into those kinds of things, which I haven't figured out in entrepreneurship, but I really want to build a lens and be able to do that, focus is not an issue.
Wow. Wow. That knife fight example that's crazy. And it's so real too.
Yeah.
And the only thing I'll add to that is you don't feel like you have to have the right answers to all those questions before you focus on it. Just focus on it, and
Yes.
the right answers will make themselves clear to you. I've been working on this
Yes.
this course. I'm coming out with a kind of a fitness product I'm gonna do a pre-recorded webinar. Gonna do a big launch. Gonna do all this stuff. And I've had
Awesome.
this same idea for 2 years. The same idea. Like the idea hasn't changed one iota. And literally on what is today? Wednesday? On Saturday, this past Saturday, I was just like, things are picking up. I'm gonna be on the road a bunch lately. It's now or never. This needs to happen within the next 12 days. And
Yep.
I've literally filmed close to 20 hours worth of content in like 4 days. And it's
It's awesome.
stupid because it wasn't hard. I already knew what I was going to talk about. I knew what it was going to be. It was just a matter of, okay, maybe I don't have all the perfect, precise answers to these little details yet, but I'm just going to focus on it. I'm going to choose to focus on it, and it'll just work itself out. And that's what's been happening. And it's
Yep.
crazy to see that play out.
That's so good. The good analogy is, you can't steer your boat in a specific direction if the boat's not moving. Like you could just sit in the boat when
Right.
it's at the dock and you can like try to turn your wheel and point the boat in the perfect direction that you think is going to align with this huge life goal. Right? But you don't know. You need to start moving in the boat. And your life journey is not just going to go from where you are right now to where you're going to go in the end. It's going to go doop, boop, boop, backwards, around. But as long as you keep taking action, you use all of those experiences as your arsenal to just make more informed decisions. And you use the relationships you formed and all of these things. And that's how you whittle yourself into the direction that you want to end up going. I just think this whole life, that's all it is. We just take these really broad actions that align or don't align. And early on, they usually don't align. And eventually, as we learn ourselves more and then accumulate the skill set, it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter to where we're really flying and we're really taking these daily actions that we love and they're really aligned. You're making this incredible impact, but that all comes from action.
Yeah.
Just take action.
Yeah. And this will be the last thing I'll say on this because I'm dragging
Yeah.
on this one. But it's so right. There's this psychologist named Carl Jung, and he had this idea that he called circumambulation. It's a big word, but what it meant was if you're here, somewhere. All right, I'll use my hands because you can't see my pen.
Mm-hmm.
If you're here and you think your goal is here, you have to go this way, right? And so what happens is you go this way, and then you get to this point, and when you're here, you have a different perspective than you had when you were here. And so the world looks different to you. And what you realize is the end point wasn't actually here to begin with, it was actually over here. But it's closer
Yep.
this time. And then you go here, and then the same thing happens. It's not actually here, it's actually over here, but it's still closer. You move over here, and you just sort of spiral into whatever it is that you're supposed to do through, whether you believe that's a spiritual thing or a psychology thing or just the universe guiding you or whatever it is. Just moving, you can't start that process, like you said, without moving. You'll never get to that different
Yeah.
perspective unless you get to the next perspective. So,
Yes. Wow. That's really good. I'll add one more thing to that. Um, and not to bounce around too much, but now when we're talking about entrepreneurship, life perspective, and all of that,
mhm.
the easiest way to take action is to help people. Okay. So this is something that I'm learning too. Do stuff for free. Just do stuff. Just do stuff. You're going to learn. You're going to see what you like. You're going to develop a skill set, and it's going to get you there. And I just think early on, people just I get it. We're taught that we have to understand our value and all of this, but just get in situations. Just get in situations, show up in the right way, and it's going to get you to the end much more quickly than just like really like cherry picking every tiny little thing you do. And I just think that's the best advice for entrepreneurship. And I do free stuff all the time now, and I never used to do it in the past. I'm just like, look, if this isn't an energetic drain to me, and it could potentially just even be an energetic plus, I'll just do it for free. That's it. Come on, let's go. And it's really been working out really well for me. And I do it. I don't care if I ever get anything back. I get the experience. I get the life. I'm getting it all right now. It's not strategic in that sense, but just do it. So,
Yeah. One thing, I got so excited about that conversation that I totally skipped over it. You said we should take a look at what you have written in your laptop. Mr. Wynn, with being on the stand right now, you have to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and only the truth.
yep,
Is there a book on the way?
there is one or three books on the way. There's a lot of info coming. And hopefully I can bring it to you guys very soon.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm excited for that. All right, couple more quick topics. Um, Number one, this is a question I've actually had for a while about this journey that you've been on. I know you're talking about enjoying it, doing it for the experience. Was there ever a lot of discipline and routine and willpower involved? Or was that almost not even a consideration because of the way that you almost rigged the game based off of that mindset?
There was definitely that involved because I'm just not that good at that mindset. So we're talking about best case scenario with the mindset, right? That's the mindset I try to live in, and I get to live in that for a period of time, and then I flip right out of that and live in the other mindset, right? What's this going to get me? Is it a waste of time? Oh, this isn't working out. This is never going to happen, right? So then I live in the negative mindset as well. So those times, that's when I hijack the action. That's when the willpower comes in. That's when you do it even when you don't want to. Luckily, though, Luckily, though, in this experience, I didn't have a lot of that, and I will say that I got better at not having a lot of that as we headed into the end.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then a question kind of playing off of that, what
Hmm.
personal character traits do you think helped you pull this off? And then kind of a
Mm.
follow up question that I'll just give you up front is, can those traits be developed and are they necessary for success?
Personal character traits. Hmm. Okay. Um, the confidence that it's all going to work out in life. Like whatever our goal here is, like whether it's to be happy, have a bunch of experiences, it's all going to work out. So really, really like understanding and having that confidence, I think is completely invaluable. Because then that leads you into the next thing, which was my mantra this whole time, is let's just be curious.
Mm,
Oh, I wonder what this is going to show me, or I wonder where this is going to lead me. And I can be curious and not fearful of the potential outcome or what this could mean, because I know no matter what it shows me or where it leads me, it's all going to work out. So I think those are some very, very important things. Um, I don't know if we want to go a level deeper than the belief that it's all going to work out, but I think the belief that it's all going to work out can come from a place when you understand that you're in control of your experience. And the better you get at being able to control your internal state and your emotions, regardless of the potential environmental inputs, the more that you don't need to manipulate your life in order to enjoy. Those are some really pretty big things in order to have that confidence that it's all going to work out.
yeah, yeah. And so if we kind of take the position that that confidence and that belief is sort of a prerequisite for success in any
Hmm.
major endeavor in life, how do we develop that? Because I know some people have
Mm.
more of it naturally, some people have less of it naturally. How do you intentionally, deliberately develop that kind of confidence?
Mm. This is good. Let me think. This is hard for me to answer because I don't. It'd be awesome to hear a bunch of people's reasons why they don't think it's going to work out. And that would be like that
Wow.
would make it a lot easier to make this answer,
Yeah.
right? Um, I think developing that confidence that it's all going to work out is really defining what workout means to you. If working out, this life being successful and working out, is I had this incredible abundance of experiences that at the time may have felt painful, may have felt joyful, but I accumulated so many of them and they were all so potent. And if at the end of the life I just have a ton of that, I won. I think really identifying that is a really big deal.
Mm.
How could you not win if winning just means accumulating experiences and you really believe that's the best way to go through this life? So I think my immediate answer would be that, but I would really love to hear from people that don't have that confidence that it's all going to work out. And I would love to hear the reasonings why. That's a really, really good thing to identify. I'm
Yeah.
going to do some better understanding and learning about that.
It's a deep question, especially for something that's
Yeah.
so important that we feel like is almost a necessity. It's a deep question. I think in a lot of ways you almost have to make the decision. And so, step one in making any decision is you have to be aware that there's a decision to be made. Otherwise, you're not in control. So I think
Yeah. Love it.
you have to know that that option is there. You have to have
Yeah.
been exposed to that mindset in some way, shape, or form previously. And then you just got to decide like how you're going to treat the experiences that you go through in your life. Because like you said, if you have a
Yeah.
bunch of negative things happen to you, that's a choice that you can make. You can either see that as, oh, the whole world's against me and I have confidence that nothing will ever work out ever because that's what the world is showing me. Or you can just make the decision to say, you know what, I believe in something. I think this is what draws a lot of people to religion as well, actually. You have that
Yeah.
belief in something bigger than you that somehow,
Yeah.
some way, even if you don't get it or understand it, it's still going to work out. I don't
Yeah.
know if I have an answer to that either, though, other than you have to make the choice. But what, like, how to make that choice or what choice specifically to make? I don't know. It's a big question.
Yeah. I think a lot that's coming to me right now too is presence. I mean,
Mm,
if working out and having a good life is just the addition of multiple enjoyable experiences, well, how we have the addition of multiple enjoyable experiences is to have this experience be enjoyable and then the next experience be enjoyable. We just know that experience can't be enjoyable if it's riddled with the anxiety of an unfavorable potential future. So believing that it's all going to work out is believing that what I can do in this very, very moment is be content and happy. And then just do that every single moment puts the power back in our hands and takes the fear of the anxiety of unfavorable future experiences away. So yeah, it's a good one. It's a really, really good question. And I would love to put that together, have a solid answer, and maybe even a process to take somebody that's not a believer, that it's all
mm,
going to work out regardless, and maybe get them to be a believer. And I also want to be very clear about this as well. I slip into modes all the time too of fear and worry and anxiety about a potential
mm.
future that I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be unfavorable, and then I'm not going to be happy. I do that all the time. I want to be very, very clear about that. And I just work on shortening the refractory period of being in that energetic and mindset state to bringing me back to it's all good. It's all going to work out. Let's see this thing unfold and let's sit back and watch the movie of my life.
Yes, yes. I'm trying so hard to find this quote right now. Oh, I found it. Just because you mentioned being present, it
Hmm.
says, "Yesterday is but a dream, tomorrow is only a vision, but today well lived makes every yesterday a dream of happiness and every tomorrow a vision of hope." And I think
So
that's
good.
so cool because it just brings a lot of light to that point that you just brought up, which is you can't really have a ton of faith or confidence in the future or even the past if you don't appreciate and use what you have in the present moment because that's really all that
Yeah.
you got. Like we have the ability, and this is the craziest thing to me. Time isn't, and this might be too deep, especially since we're toward the end here.
Hmm.
But um, time is such you have the ability to almost change it because if you change the way that you see the past and the way you interpret the past and perceive the past, you're almost changing the past. And likewise,
Yeah.
the future, you have control over what happens in the future based off of what you do right now today. It's just a crazy concept to think about, like how much control you really have just by utilizing and fully leveraging what you have right now in the present.
Yeah. And what you just said is very powerful about your perception of the past. For those of you that think it's like a little out there to try to perceive your past as positive, and you can think of these really negative experiences, I really, really want you to think deeply about what I'm saying when I say that all of these environmental energies are potentially positive or negative, and they do not get labeled until they mix with your internal belief system and you put a label on them. I mean, come on, everybody's had an experience in their life where they've had the experience at one stage in life, thought it was negative, and then they started liking that experience. Or even they recalled that positively later and said it was the best thing that's actually ever happened to them. But at that moment in life, they thought it was the worst. So you're absolutely right, Burns. And there is no anxiety. Anxiety is worrying about a potentially unfavorable future. And depression is perceiving your past negatively. And both of those things are completely in your control. Let go of envisioning this potentially unfavorable future that we have no idea whether it's going to happen or not. And let go of perceiving your past as negatively because it is just a building block to arm you with the skill set to have more enjoyment in your future. So it's positive, and that is just the way to eliminate those two things and be present and then accumulate multiple present moments, which makes a good life.
Man, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. I got one final kind of wild card question for you. I didn't show you this
Yes.
beforehand because I always like to throw it in as a little surprise at the end. So,
Yeah.
so you're talking to 16-year-old Wynn, right?
Yep.
And
Oh,
before the gymnastic success, before the business success, before everything, but now you have the current knowledge, information, mindset that you have after this most recent experience with gymnastics. You get to tell them one piece of advice and one piece of advice only. What would that be?
play big and let this life rip, brother. That is it. Play as big as you can humanly play, as big as you can play, and let it all go. That is exactly what I would tell him. And just pray that he did it.
Right. I love it, man. I love it. Thank you for doing this, man. I know this has been
Dude,
really fun. I
this
think
was
we
so much
already
fun.
yeah, we already have established I think we need to do a round two. For sure
Definitely.
when the book drops, we gotta have some promo for that. But man, this has
Yeah.
been great. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
No final thoughts, I don't think. Just hopefully we can just distill that down and get a lot of really good takeaways. But this was so much fun. And I just want to commend you and acknowledge you. You're really great at this. You're a deep thinker. And especially for your age, brother, you're incredible. So keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm getting older. My birthday's next month. I'll be 24, so I'm getting up there, man. Becoming
Man,
elderly.
you're incredible. Jeez.
I'm getting elderly, but all right, man. Just thank you again for doing this
Dude,
with us, and thank you everybody who's watching for logging on and checking this out. It's been an honor just to have this conversation in your presence and be able to try and give you some value. Whoever you are watching this, there's something in here for you. I promise. No matter what stage of life you're in, no matter how old you are, no matter what you look like, what you've been through, there's something in here that you can take from this and leverage to literally make the rest of your life better than anything that you ever may have imagined possible. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one because there will be a part two.
yes, sir. See you guys.